Namaste, and welcome to another engaging episode where we explore a new and intriguing topic. I'm Shree, and joining me is my co-host, Deep. You're listening to InfoLabs, so sit back, relax, and join us as we dive into something fascinating.
Our listeners understand what this exam is all about and also why it matters.
Yeah.
Why should they even care about the TOEFL?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's key, right? Because, whether you're thinking about studying abroad, maybe in the US or Canada, Europe, exactly. Or even if you know your job or maybe your immigration goals require you to show you've got strong English skills.
Right.
The TOEFL is probably going to be a pretty important step for you.
Yeah, it really is.
So we want to make sure you feel ready,
Prepared.
Yeah, totally prepared and confident about it.
Yeah. Confident going into it.
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're going to break down each section of the TOEFL. Reading, listening, speaking, writing.
The whole shebang.
The whole thing. Yeah, and we'll highlight those key strategies that can make a real difference.
Right, the things that'll really give you an edge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll also point out some common pitfalls to avoid, those traps that people often fall into.
Yeah, those little things that can trip you up.
Exactly. And we'll talk about, how to prepare effectively, how to get ready for this exam.
Yeah, because you don't want to go in unprepared.
No, absolutely not.
So yeah, think of this deep dive as like your shortcut to understanding what's really important about the TOEFL.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So first off, when people talk about the TOEFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are they actually talking about? Like, what version of this exam are we really focusing on here?
Okay, so usually when you hear people say TOEFL, they're talking about the TOEFL IBT.
IBT.
Yeah, IBT. And that stands for Internet-Based Test. And this is like the main version, the one that most universities and organizations really prefer nowadays.
Gotcha. So like that's the standard one these days.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
There's also the paper-based test, the TOEFL PBT.
PBT.
But that's becoming less and less common. That's mostly used in places where, internet access isn't so reliable.
Makes sense.
So for our deep dive today, we'll mainly be talking about the IBT.
Yeah, IBT.
Because that's almost certainly the one you'll be taking.
Right. Yeah, IBT is the main event.
Exactly.
So what does this IBT exam actually look like? What's the overall structure?
Okay, so the TOEFL IBT is pretty comprehensive. It takes about 3 hours to complete from start to finish.
Wow, 3 hours. That's a long exam.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mental workout.
Yeah.
And it's scored out of 120 points.
Okay, 120.
With each of the 4 sections, reading, listening, speaking, writing, they all contribute equally.
Right.
Each section has a score range from 0 to 30.
Okay, so each one is like a quarter of the total score.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so 3 hours, 4 sections, reading, listening, speaking, writing, and we're going to get into each of those in detail soon.
Yeah, we'll break them all down.
But before we do you know who actually looks at these TOEFL scores? Who are these results important for?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's really important to know this because the TOEFL is accepted by a huge network of institutions.
Like how many are we talking?
Over 11,000?
11,000?
Yeah, in over 150 countries.
Okay, so this is a big deal.
Yeah, this is worldwide. And this includes like pretty much all the big universities and colleges in the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand.
And Europe too, right?
Tons in Europe, yeah.
Okay.
So if studying abroad is something you're thinking about, the TOEFL is going to be important.
Yeah, chances are you're going to need it.
Yeah, the places you're applying to will likely require it or at least recommend it.
Okay, so it's not just for university though, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like who else is looking at these TOEFL scores?
Well, a lot of government agencies use it for visa applications.
Oh, and more international employers are using it too.
So it's not just about getting into school. It's about, other opportunities too.
Exactly. It's about showing you can communicate effectively in English.
Right, which is essential in today's world.
Absolutely. It can open a lot of doors for you.
Okay, so that gives us a good overview of why the TOEFL is so important. So let's jump into the specifics now.
To do it.
Starting with the reading section.
Okay, reading.
So when you sit down for that part of the exam, what can you expect to see?
Okay, so in the reading section, you'll usually get 3 to 4 academic passages.
Okay, passages.
And these are kind of similar in style and difficulty to what you might see in university textbooks or academic articles.
Oh, okay, so like real academic stuff.
Yeah, the real deal.
Okay.
And they cover a range of subjects, things you might encounter in like introductory university courses.
Okay, so it's not like super specialized knowledge.
No, not really. It's more about testing your general reading comprehension skills.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then after each passage, you'll have a bunch of questions to answer.
Okay.
Most of them are multiple choice.
Classic multiple choice.
But you'll also see some where you need to insert a sentence into the passage.
Oh, like find the best place for it.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And some that ask you to summarize the main ideas of the passage.
So they're really testing your understanding of the text.
Yeah, they want to see if you can grasp the main points and the details.
Okay. What else might we see in the reading section?
You might also get some vocabulary questions, where you have to figure out the meaning of a word based on how it's used in the passage.
Okay, context clues.
Yeah, and also questions about the author's purpose, like why did they write this passage? What are they trying to achieve?
Okay, so it's not just about understanding the words themselves. It's about thinking critically about the text.
Exactly.
Okay, so multiple choice inserting sentences, summarizing vocabulary author's purpose. It sounds like they're really testing your ability to work with academic text.
Yeah, that's the main goal of the reading section.
Okay, so what's a key strategy we should keep in mind for this section?
Oh, without a doubt. The biggest thing is time management.
Time management.
Yeah. You have a limited amount of time to read those passages and answer all the questions.
Okay.
So you really got to pace yourself.
Right. Don't get bogged down.
Exactly. A lot of people make the mistake of spending way too long on one question.
Yeah, you can get stuck on one and then suddenly time's running out.
Exactly, and then you're rushing through the rest.
So what's the best approach then?
If you find yourself stuck on a question, just make your best guess and move on.
Okay.
You can always come back to it at the end if you have time.
Right.
And another good tip is to skim the questions before you even start reading the passage.
Oh, okay, so you have an idea of what to look for.
Exactly. That way you can focus your reading.
It's smart.
Yeah, it can save you a lot of time.
Okay, so time management is key for the reading section.
Absolutely crucial.
Okay, so we've tackled reading. Now let's move on to the listening section.
Okay.
What kind of audio are we going to be listening to in this part of the exam?
So in the listening section, you'll hear recordings of lectures and conversations.
Lectures and conversations, okay.
Yeah, the lectures are usually excerpts from academic talks.
Okay.
And they often follow common lecture structures, like, problem, solution, cause, effect, comparison, contrast.
Okay, so there are patterns to look out for.
Yeah, recognizing those patterns can really help you follow along and figure out what information is important.
Okay, good to know.
And the topics they cover are pretty diverse, things you might encounter in a university setting.
Okay.
Then the conversations, they usually involve interactions between students and professors,
okay,
like during office hours, or discussions with university staff about administrative things, like registering for courses or asking questions at the library.
So it's like simulating a real university environment.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, that makes sense. So for this section, what's a really important skill to have?
Oh, for listening, effective note-taking is absolutely essential.
Note-taking, okay.
You won't be able to remember everything you hear.
Right, that's a lot of information.
Yeah, so you need a good system for jotting down the key points.
Okay, so like main ideas, supporting details, examples.
Exactly, and try using abbreviations and symbols to speed up your note-taking.
Okay.
And focus on capturing the flow of the lecture or conversation.
Okay.
Pay attention to transition words, those words that signal a change in topic.
Like however or in addition.
Exactly. Those are good clues.
Okay.
And also jot down any questions that are asked.
Questions.
Because
right.
those often point to important information.
Right, because the speaker is probably going to answer those questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so note-taking is more than just writing down everything you hear.
Yeah, it's about being strategic and focusing on what's important.
And it takes practice, right?
Definitely. The more you practice different note-taking techniques, the better you'll get at it.
Okay, so are there any other helpful tactics for the listening section?
Yeah, learning to anticipate potential questions can be really useful.
Anticipate questions. Okay, how do we do that?
Well, as you listen, try to predict what kind of questions they might ask based on what the speaker's emphasizing. or if they repeat certain points or the overall structure of what they're saying.
Oh, okay. So like if a lecturer keeps talking about a specific experiment, you can bet there's going to be a question about it.
Exactly. So this kind of active listening and anticipation can really help you focus your note-taking on the most relevant information.
Right. So you're not wasting time writing down stuff that's probably not going to be on the test.
That's the idea.
Okay, so we've listened. Now comes the part that I think a lot of people find a bit scary, the speaking section.
Yeah, speaking can be nerve-wracking.
So what exactly does this section involve?
Okay, so the speaking section has 4 tasks.
4 tasks, okay.
And they're divided into 2 categories, independent and integrated.
Okay, independent and integrated. Let's break those down.
All right, so the independent task asks you to express your opinion on a familiar topic.
Okay, so like a personal opinion question.
Yeah, something you've probably thought about before.
Okay.
You'll get a question, you'll have a little bit of time for prepare, and then you have to speak for a certain amount of time.
Okay, so it's timed.
Yeah.
All right, what about the integrated tasks?
Okay, so those are a bit more complex. You have to combine skills.
Combine skills, okay.
Usually you'll read a short passage, then you'll listen to a related audio clip, and then you have to speak about the information you got from both sources.
So it's like connecting the dots.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's not just about chatting in English. It's about being able to process information and explain it clearly.
Right, you have to show you can synthesize information and express your thoughts in a structured way.
Okay, so what are the graders looking for when they evaluate our speaking responses? What are the key things they're scoring on?
Okay, so they're really focusing on a few main things.
Okay, hit me with them.
Fluency, coherence, pronunciation, and grammar.
Okay, let's unpack those.
All right, so fluency isn't just about how fast you speak. It's also about having a natural flow, with appropriate pauses.
Right, it's got to sound smooth.
Exactly.
Okay, what about coherence?
Coherence is about how logically you organize your ideas and connect them.
Okay, so it's about the structure of your response.
Yeah, it's got to make sense. It's got to flow.
Okay.
Then pronunciation, obviously, they want to make sure people can understand you.
Right.
You don't need a perfect accent, but your speech should be clear.
Okay, and grammar?
Grammar is about using correct grammatical structures to express your ideas.
Okay, so all 4 of those are important.
Yeah, they all play a role in getting a good score.
All right, so for those independent tasks where we're giving our opinion, do you have any tips on how to structure those responses?
Oh, absolutely. There's a really handy method called the peer rep method.
TOEFL method. Okay, I like it.
It's a simple framework, but it's really effective.
Okay, break it down for us.
All right, so P stands for point.
Point. Okay.
You start by stating your opinion clearly and directly.
Okay, so like, I believe that, or in my opinion. Okay, then R is for?
R is for reason.
Reason, okay.
You give a clear reason to support your opinion.
So like, because.
Exactly.
Okay, what's E?
E is for example.
Example.
Okay,
yeah.
You back up your reason with a specific example, maybe a personal anecdote or a hypothetical situation.
Oh, okay, so like a real-life illustration of your point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then the final P.
The final P is for point again.
Okay, so you're restating your opinion.
Yeah, you're wrapping it up, reinforcing your main idea.
Okay, so the P for AP method, point, reason, example, point.
Got it.
Easy to remember. Can you give us an example of how this might work with a typical question?
Sure, let's take a question like, should students work part-time while studying at university?
Okay, classic TOEFL question.
So using the pre method, you might say something like, in my opinion, students should definitely work part-time while studying.
Okay, there's your point.
Right. One key reason is that it helps them develop valuable time management skills.
There's your reason.
Exactly. For instance, when I was a student, I had a part-time job at the university library. And balancing my work schedule with my coursework taught me how to prioritize tasks and meet deadlines efficiently, skills that have been super valuable throughout my life.
There's your example.
Right. Therefore, I strongly believe that working part-time offers significant benefits for university students.
And there's your final point.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a really clear and well-structured response.
The PRP method is your friend.
All right, what about those integrated speaking tasks where you have to read, listen, and then speak?
Okay, so for those, the most important thing is taking good notes during both the reading and listening phases.
Note-taking, again, it's so important.
It really is. You won't have time to memorize everything.
Okay.
So your notes are your lifeline.
Right.
Focus on capturing the main arguments and key details from both the reading and the listening.
Okay.
And pay close attention to how the listening passage relates to the reading. Does it support it? Challenge it? Give examples.
Okay.
When you speak, prioritize clarity.
Clarity.
Okay. Make sure you're conveying the information clearly and explaining the connections between the two sources.
Okay.
Don't get too hung up on perfect grammar or pronunciation. Just focus on summarizing the information accurately and in a well-organized way.
Okay, so clarity over perfection.
Exactly.
Okay, now I want to give our listeners a chance to try this out.
Good idea. Let's give them a practice prompt.
Okay, here it is. Some people believe that space exploration is a waste of valuable resources. Do you agree or disagree with this statement?
Good one.
So take about 15 seconds now to think about how you might structure a response using the PRP method.
And remember, point reasoning, example point.
Okay, welcome back. Hopefully they gave you a little taste of what the independent speaking task is like.
Yeah, it's all about practice. The more you practice, the more natural those structured responses will feel.
Okay, so we've covered reading, listening, speaking. Now let's move on to the final section, writing.
Okay, the essay portion.
So what can we expect in the writing section?
Okay, so there are 2 essay tasks.
2.
The first one is an integrated writing task.
Integrated writing.
Okay, so for this one, you'll first read a short academic passage.
Okay, like in the reading section.
Yeah, similar.
Okay.
Then you'll listen to a lecture that discusses the same topic.
Okay.
But the lecture might present a different perspective. Maybe offer counter-arguments or provide more details.
Okay, so you have to synthesize information from 2 sources.
Exactly.
Okay.
Your task is to write an essay summarizing the main points from the lecture and explaining how they relate to the information in the reading passage.
Okay, so it's about connecting the dots again.
Yeah, showing you can analyze and synthesize information.
Okay, what about the second essay task?
The second one is an independent writing task.
Independent, okay.
This one's more about expressing your own opinion.
All right, so like the independent speaking task, but in written form.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They'll give you a statement on a particular issue, and you have to write an essay stating your opinion on that statement and supporting your viewpoint with reasons and examples.
Okay, so it's all about arguing your case clearly and persuasively.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay, so for both of these essay tasks, do you have any strategies or approaches that we can use?
Yeah, using template structures can be really helpful,
Templates.
especially when you're under time pressure.
Okay.
For the integrated essay, a template can guide you in structuring your response to clearly show how the lecture relates to the reading.
Okay.
Like, does the lecture support the reading? Does it challenge it? Does it provide examples?
Right.
And for the independent essay, having a basic essay structure in mind can help you organize your thoughts and make sure you address the prompt fully.
Okay, so like an introduction with a thesis statement, body paragraphs with reasons and evidence and a conclusion.
Exactly, that classic essay structure.
Right. So these templates can help us stay on track and make sure we're covering everything we need to.
Yeah, it's like having a roadmap.
Okay, so templates for essays, good strategy. Now, let's talk about how to actually prepare for the TOEFL.
Okay, the study plan.
What kind of study plan should we be thinking about putting together?
So the ideal length of your study plan really depends on your current English level and your target score.
Okay.
But common timelines are 1 month or 3 months.
Okay, 1 month or 3 months?
A 1 month plan is more intensive. You got to study pretty much every day.
Okay.
Focus on targeted practice and getting really familiar with the exam format.
So like a crash course.
Kind of, yeah. But a 3-month plan allows for a more gradual approach.
Okay, so you can spread it out a bit.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can incorporate regular practice with more time for review and focus on improving your weaker areas.
Okay, so it's a more balanced approach.
Yeah, and regardless of which timeline you choose, the most important thing is consistency.
Consistency.
Even short, regular study sessions are better than sporadic long ones.
So it's about building a habit.
Exactly.
Okay, what kind of resources should we be using for our preparation?
Oh, there are tons of great resources out there.
Like what?
The official TOEFL guides published by ETS are a must-have. Yeah, ETS is the company that makes the TOEFL.
Okay.
Those guides have authentic practice questions, real test examples, and valuable insights into the test format and scoring.
So they're like the gold standard.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, what else?
Well, there are also lots of reputable websites and YouTube channels that offer lessons, test-taking tips, practice exercises.
Okay.
And apps like Magoosh and the official ETS TOEFL app can be really helpful for practicing on the go.
So lots of options.
Yeah. It's good to use a mix of resources, get different perspectives and make sure you have enough practice material for all 4 sections.
Okay. Variety is key.
Yeah.
So official guides, online resources, helpful apps.
Oh.
Now, what about mock tests and feedback? What role do they play in our preparation?
Mock tests are super important.
Okay.
Taking full-length timed practice tests simulates the real exam environment.
Right, so you get used to the pressure.
Exactly, and it helps you build stamina and pacing skills.
Okay.
But more importantly, mock tests help you figure out your strengths and weaknesses.
Oh, okay, so you can see where you need to improve.
Yeah, by analyzing your performance on those practice tests, you can pinpoint the areas where you need to focus your study efforts.
Okay.
And getting feedback on your speaking and writing responses is also super valuable.
Okay, so where can we get that feedback?
You could ask a tutor, a language exchange partner, or use online services that offer feedback on TOEFL responses.
Okay.
Because understanding where you're falling short and getting specific suggestions for improvement, that's a key part of preparing effectively.
So mock tests for practice and feedback for targeted improvement, both essential parts of the process.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about some common mistakes that people make on the TOEFL and how to avoid them.
Okay, let's do it.
What's a big one?
One of the most common mistakes is time management.
Time management, again, it just keeps coming up.
It's so important.
Okay.
A lot of people struggle to finish all the questions or tasks within the time limit.
Right, it's a long exam.
Yeah, so to avoid this, you got to practice pacing yourself during all your study sessions, and especially during your mock tests.
Okay, so get used to working under pressure.
Exactly. And be really aware of the time limits for each section and each individual task.
Okay.
And don't spend too long on any one question. If you're stuck, move on and come back later if you have time.
Don't get bogged down.
Exactly.
All right, what's another common mistake?
Another big one is not understanding or misinterpreting the prompts.
Oh, okay. Especially in the speaking and writing sections.
Yeah, those are the ones where it's really easy to go off track.
Okay.
So it's super important to read and analyze the questions carefully before you start planning your response.
Okay.
Pay attention to all the keywords and make sure your answer is directly addressing every aspect of the prompt.
So take your time, understand the question fully.
Exactly. Rushing through the questions can lead to answers that are off topic or incomplete.
Right, you think you're answering the question, but you're actually not.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other pitfalls we should be aware of?
Yeah. Another common one is overcomplicating your answers.
Overcomplicating, okay.
In both speaking and writing, clarity and conciseness are more important than using super complex vocabulary or grammar.
Okay, so keep it simple.
Yeah, focus on expressing your ideas clearly and logically, using language that you're comfortable with.
Right. Trying to use fancy words you're not sure about can actually make your writing worse.
Exactly. It can lead to errors and make your writing harder to understand.
So clarity is key.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. Any final words of encouragement for our listeners who are about to take the TOEFL?
I would just say with focused and consistent preparation, a good understanding of the exam structure and effective strategies like the ones we talked about today, success on the TOEFL is absolutely within your reach.
You got this.
Yeah, it's a challenging exam, but don't be intimidated.
Right.
With the right approach, you can confidently demonstrate your English skills and achieve your goals.
Absolutely. And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay, hit us with it.
When you think about the skills that TOEFL assesses, reading, listening, speaking, writing, which one do you think is the most crucial for effective communication in today's world, and why?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's something to think about even after you've aced the TOEFL.
It's about more than just the test itself.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
We'll see you next time.